idea of developing the book started when in my very first visit sa PGLI Museum. In the course of my discussions with him, I found out that this person is no ordinary person. This person can show a lot to the world. And what better way to show his thoughts, his ideas, his personal accomplishments and achievements by writing about him via a coffee table book. So that was 3-4 years ago, and I never realized na after this period, the idea of developing a book about him would come about.
When the foundation reached out to our team, the first thing that we did was to Google information about the ambassador. And the first thing that we saw was this really wonderful photo of him with his very charming smile. That photo actually became the official cover of the book.
As we were researching on the life of PJL, we discovered that there are so many aspects of his life that are really interesting and are worth sharing with the readers. Aside from being an ambassador, he is a successful businessman, a religious art collector, and everything that he has done in those areas of his life are larger than life. Cebuana is an iconic brand in the Philippines. His PJ Lhuillier Museum is epic, and being the longest-serving Philippine ambassador makes him really someone very interesting to know.
The ambassador is really special. There isn't anyone quite like him. So giving readers a glimpse of what his life was like is like a big adventure, even for us who work behind the scenes.
So the ambassador was very surprised to see the camera set up during his first interview in his office. And we had these huge lights and we had to do his makeup. And he kept saying, "I never imagined doing this. Not in a million years. Santa banana." The team had to make sure that we capture his stories well. And we appreciate that he was very accommodating and game. The first interview actually took more than 3 hours. And he talked non-stop. He is a great storyteller.
How do you encapsulate over 7 decades worth of interesting stories? Photos.
We were able to source a lot of interesting photographs from PJL's childhood, family photos, his friends, his stints in different countries as ambassador. A lot of these have never been seen by the public before. It made the stories more interesting because the photos captured the moments that were very important to PJL.
I tell you, all the chapters worth seeing, particularly also the beautiful pictures na naka-infused dito sa book na ito.
Sourcing the photos is one thing. Taking them is another. Especially that of the museum. For some strange reason, some equipment just didn't work. To begin with, the collection is massive and very overwhelming. You just don't know which one to prioritize because the ambassador has a story to tell about each piece. We actually had a total of 5 photographers for the museum alone.
Aside from the visual feast that the book offers, there are many surprising elements there and new revelations in the book that amazed even us, the editorial team. Like the Philippine passport that now has a 10-year validity, or that the Philippines now has a second saint. How was PJL involved? You have to read the book to find out.
So we narrowed down the book into 5 chapters. PJL is a very interesting family backstory from his grandparents, his parents, and his siblings. His childhood is peppered with a lot of experiences that are amusing, inspiring, and life lessons one can really learn from. The chapter extends to his life as a businessman up to the time that he accepted the offer to become ambassador to Italy.
The second chapter involved a lot of coordination with the Philippine Embassy in Madrid and PJL staff who helped us with the information about the work of PJL as an ambassador. And considering that PJL has been a diplomat for 23 years, that's a lot of data that we had to dig. And that's a lot of accomplishments too. What came out consistently from PJL was his dream for the OFWs. He wants to construct the Centro de Filipinas in Madrid. He would constantly talk about it. It is very vivid in his mind that there is no iota of doubt that this will happen in the near future.
A Spiritual Sojourn talks about the spiritual aspects of his life. When we were filming The Ambassador, you see his eyes light up. When he talks about his collections at the museum, he's actually beaming with pride and there's so much excitement in his voice. We were able to capture very tender moments of the Ambassador with Santa Rosa de Lima. You really felt his devotion to her. There are also pieces in the collection with very interesting stories, like the crucifix with the dagger, used for blood compact, and the bejeweled statue had a lot of rings on her. Marami daw sing-sing na pwedeng isanla sa Cebuana.
Pwede ba sangla sa Punjab?
A very special part of the book is Chapter 4. This is made up of article contributions from Mrs. Lhuillier and all of their 7 children. Originally, the chapter about the family was supposed to be told from the perspective of Mrs. Lhuillier. But ADL had this great suggestion of letting the whole family be interviewed. And the idea turned out really well.
I'd like to thank also the entire Lhuillier family, the entire clan, for finding time. To our President, CEO, Jean-Henry Lhuillier, to our Senior Executive Vice President, Andre Lhuillier, for giving us the go signal to release this book.
During the vetting process, PJL got very emotional. He was surprised to read the articles his children wrote. And for readers of the book, this is rare intimate glimpse of the Lhuillier family, who are actually very private.
The biggest lesson I learned from my dad is to always try to go for what you want, to give everything that you have, to go for your dreams.
He was less strict than my mom. And he was most often than not our more emotional parent. He's kind of a very big teddy bear, so he's a softy at heart.
He's been a great father. He taught us how to treat each other well, how to be with each other, taught us how to be good people, be good to each other, and make sure family stays family.
He would always text, and his texts are so sweet, always with, I love you, Palanga, I love you, take care, be happy.
He has like no mean bone in him. He's hardworking, he's religious. I think everything that's good is my dad.
Really proud of my dad. He really took care of us. We had a great upbringing with his attitude. He always pressed it upon us to do your best, make sure that you enjoy what you're doing, and it's so important to always give back. I was sent to boarding school when I was 12, and I'm sure it was very hard for them to let me go, and you can tell that even my dad was like, oh no, I'm letting my eldest go away. Then my dad, my mom were saying, you know, it's for your own good. You know, my dad's always been a great mentor. I'm very happy in terms of how he's made me look at the world, not only from a business sense. He's always pressed that make sure the family's together. You know, my dad's really a person that takes a look at things from all sides. And he wants to make sure that when you take a look at things, make sure that it's a win-win for people.
Oh, Philip is a very generous person, kind, loving, and very thoughtful to others. And he always wants to help anyone who comes to him and asking for help. He'll never refuse anyone. If he can do it, he'll do it. For example, if I have someone who is sick and I want to give, and he will tell me, why don't you give more? Why don't you double it?
What a better way to know a person but through the testimonials of the people who have been his lifelong friends or those who have worked with him closely. In chapter 5, 5 people contributed articles, and each one has a unique story about the ambassador. Their stories humanized PJL. Beyond his stature in society, you'll see him as a normal person, a good friend, a thoughtful boss, a guy with a good sense of humor, all of that and much more.
I'd like to thank personally the ambassador himself for disclosing his personal life stories to us. That I think it's really worth sharing to the Filipino people. We deserve to learn his story.
Finally, the last chapter is dedicated to the advocacies of the PJL Foundation, which is now known as Cebuana Lhuillier Foundation. It shows how the programs initiated by the ambassador have evolved and how these have contributed to enhancing inclusion and resiliency in particular, and in the betterment of Philippine society in general. The book, A Purposeful Journey of a Lifetime, is a fitting tribute to a special man who continues to live a life of significance and purpose, our proud founder and guiding light to the Cebuana Lhuillier Foundation, Ambassador Philippe Jones Lhuillier.